Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. Art Burns here, you there, and I'm really excited to be doing this with you today. That line is actually not my own. That comes from an old radio host back in New York, an overnight sports radio host. He used to call himself Captain Midnight. Steve Summers is his name. He was a great, funny guy. The schmooze, he used to call himself, which is I think it's a Yiddish-inspired word to just, when you schmooze, you just have a little chat, and that's what he did all night. Steve the Schmooze Summers. So he would intro into all of his radio shows. Steve Summers here, you there, and let's get on with the show, something like that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. So I'm happy to be here with you, as I always am, and I'm excited to share today. Every day I look at my notes and I see, okay, what am I going to talk about today on my podcast? It's so exciting. And so today I want to talk about how, so many times when we talk about when I talk here on the podcast and YouTube channel about all the different benefits that we get from practicing mindfulness, most of the time we're talking about, the benefits in terms of how mindfulness and meditation can eliminate something that is negative in our lives, right? Something that we're trying to fix. Right? And so what I mean, things like stress and things like anger management and things like emotional intelligence, even that, it's a very positive concept, emotional intelligence, right? You get to connect to people, you have more empathy, you have more self-regulation, it's really good stuff, right? And it's all about understanding, right? So that's a positive thing. But most people approach it like, I need more emotional intelligence because I'm suffering at my job, or because I can't handle, emotional situations with my family, or whatever it is. So it's always this thing that we're looking at as something that is going to fix something that's wrong in our lives. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. If you're suffering, then your natural impulse, and really your responsibility to yourself and to everyone else around you, is to bring an end to that suffering. Right. So there's nothing wrong with trying to repair the things in our lives that are causing us to suffer. And mindfulness and meditation can absolutely, do that. It can really address many of the things that make us suffer in our lives. So it makes sense that that's the way we do it. But there's a whole other half of everything here, right? There's the half of things that, aside from just the things that might be, like how meditation and mindfulness might fix the things that are, causing you to suffer. Well, think about how they can improve the things that aren't involved in suffering too. And that's what I want to talk about today, because it doesn't get talked about enough. It really doesn't. And so the other day, while I was sitting in my office, and that's how I keep this notebook with me everywhere I go, and that's where, and this pen, right? These things to go as much or more than my wallet, right? These things go wherever I go. And so so oftentimes an idea will just pop into my head, like while I'm working or something, and I'll jot it down real quick and be like, yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about next week. I got to put that in rotation for the podcast. That's how the process works for me, just so you get an idea of that. Not that you asked or anything, but I just thought I'd offer it. And so when we talk about, though, anyway, sorry, I digress. I was sitting in my office and I thought about the fact that, I have in my life now, over the last, 3-4 years, something like that, I have developed a number of hobbies. And they're wonderful hobbies, and I love my hobbies. They're really awesome, and they have nothing to do with improving myself in any kind of way. I've done things like journaling, I've done things like meditation, I've done, and these things become somewhat kind of hobby-ish, right? Like they're something that we do because we enjoy it and we love it. I mean, obviously for me, mindfulness and meditation have become my life. I teach it to other people, and there's no mistake there, right? I realized how powerful this was for me, and so I was inspired by that to dedicate myself to teaching it to others, and so that there's no mistake there, okay? But yet, there have been these hobbies that have come up, a long time, 4 years ago, maybe, I started riding a bicycle pretty avidly. Now, I had been a bicycle rider, in my youth. I was a New York City bike messenger for a couple of years. So, I mean, I was always a very avid bicycle rider. But I had lost touch with it, and now I regained that passion, and I ride my bike regularly out here. This winter, I was a little I was very busy and a little lazy, and I didn't ride a lot this winter. But up until this winter, even in, unless it was like, even sometimes when I had to get somewhere, I would, I lived without a car here in Denver for 2 years. And so in those winters, if I had somewhere to go, no matter what the weather was, I was riding my bike, and I loved it. It was like kind of part of the hobby and part of the fun, it was awesome. But the thing is, and I guess what I'm really trying to get at here is that, my life for so long, right, back when I was working in advertising and back when I was, struggling with the incredibly high levels of stress that I used to struggle with, and just, just really, I mean, and when I say struggle, I mean struggle. I was, my gosh, my stress used to be so horrible. I mean, it was, just, I've told you the story here before, but like I hardly ever slept. I was 100 pounds overweight. I was, drinking all the time. I was a terrible, functioning, but a high functioning alcoholic. All these things are going on. I smoked cigarettes. I smoked like a pack and a half a day of cigarettes, and God, just when I think back on how I used to live, it's scary, and it was all in response to the big stress that I was feeling. That was mostly tied to my job, that's mostly where it came from, and anyway, so during those days, during those many years, I mean, you're talking 20 years of time, maybe 30 years of time, I didn't have any hobbies, right? And back then, when I look back, I was talking to a colleague, another mindfulness teacher, who also happens to be a cardiologist, and I'm hoping to have him on my other podcast soon, so you'll get to meet him. But Dr. Fisher, he mentioned at one point when we were talking that, and it really resonated with me. I never thought of it this way before, but this is exactly what was happening to me, is that, I had this sort of, this posture, vis-a-vis my life, this sort of approach to my life, that it was just to get through, that every day, the only thing that I needed to do every day was just to get to the end of the day and survive it, basically. Now, of course, I was in very, high levels of chronic stress. And so my body was physically in the survival mode for all those years, right? Like that's a real physical thing that was happening. But just in terms of my emotions and my psychology, I just wanted to just get through it. And of course, when you're just trying to get through the days, right, then you're really just trying to get through the years too. It all becomes just that sort of pattern, right? And so when you live day by day with just this feeling like, I just got to get done with it. I just got to get through the day, get to the end of the day when I finally get to sit down on my couch, crack open a beer and watch Netflix, right? Or watch some sports game or something like that, right? If that's the way you treat every day, well, then ultimately that becomes the way you treat your life. And that's what happens to a lot of folks, is that, in my opinion, we spend our days, as young people, our 20s and 30s, we spend just sacrificing ourselves to our mission, and most people's mission is, just make as much money as we can, and what happens then is that you get into your 40s and your 50s and your 60s, and you look back and you say, oh my gosh, what did I do? I just wasted everything. I just wasted the whole thing. Fix the screen a little bit there. And so, sorry, that was bugging me. For all you on the podcast, I just made a very simple tweak to my camera angle, and it helps a lot for me. Thank you for indulging me. But that's the thing, right? So it becomes, where you're looking back on your life when, your body is broken from all the hard work, and your emotions are a mess from all the stress. Your body, your internal body, like your heart rate and your blood pressure, your arteries, all that stuff has taken the damage of years of chronic stress. Maybe you're on some medications, maybe you've been told by your doctor that you gotta, eat nothing but salads for the rest of your life, things like that, and you get to the point where you're looking back and you're saying, well, I don't have the power or the facilities to do anything more. And now I'm just looking back at my life and I'm just saying, like, gosh, it's been such a waste. And that's how I felt. I consider myself very lucky that I realized this when I was only 42, and I was able to lose 100 pounds. And I'm in better shape now than I've been in my whole life. So if you grab it when you're in your 40s, yeah, I mean, you got plenty of time to fix it. But if you grab it in your 60s, I don't know, right? I mean, what damage has been done in those other 20 years between 40 and 60 years old? Again, chronic stress is no joke. And for a lot of people, right, what happens is we stay in these careers, and that time when we're about 40, 45, things start taking a downturn, right? And then the new stress becomes, how do I survive until I'm 65? How do I keep this job so that I can retire? Right? And then that causes even more stress in those last 20 years of your career, which creates more damage, which causes you to be on more medications and more medical, issues that you're going to experience. And so I don't mean to be a bummer here. It's not to bum you out. And if you're, no matter what age you are, I mean, it's definitely not too late. Like, if you discover mindfulness and meditation when you're 60, I mean, do it. It's not too late. It's just you're working with a car that's got a lot of miles on it. So there's only so much that most people in their 60s are not going to, anyway, I don't want to get into the whole prognosis or anything like that. I've heard stories of people in their 90s who have taken up meditation and mindfulness and changed themselves and had really beautiful years in the end of the year. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic here, and I hope you're not taking that this way. But the real thing that I wanted to mention is that what mindfulness does, and this is whether you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, 60, 90, doesn't matter, right? What mindfulness and meditation are doing are allowing us, instead of trying to survive the day, instead of just getting to the end of it, instead of just crawling across that finish line, right? Every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, right? Instead of all that, when we practice mindfulness, and heartfulness, compassion, right? What we're doing is we're allowing ourselves to dwell in the richness of the present moment. And that's a really important concept, and as you know, I don't approach this from a purely spiritual or any kind of religious kind of approach. I do this with a very scientific approach. That's my thing, right? And so the reason I say that is because the richness of the moment is a scientific concept. Right? It's not just spiritual, right? The richness of the present moment. What that means is that when we're able to, and when we commit to, really attending to this richness of the present moment, right? When we're really there 100% with what's happening, it opens us up to all kinds of beauty in life. Right? And one of these beauties in life are, it's your relationships with people, right? Like when we can really dwell in the present moment, and we're what that means is that we're letting go of all of the noise that's about, like, what is all this stuff I got to get done, this week, and what are all my, obligations and aspirations and pressure that I put on myself. We let go of all that stuff. It doesn't mean that we don't, attend to our obligations. In fact, we do it much more effectively and much more efficiently, right? But it's not, but it's not with this like gripping fear that we do it. It's actually with an enthusiastic excitement that we do it. Just like I told you yesterday, doing this podcast every day. I mean, believe me, on a day like today, I could show you my calendar here, and I have, basically meetings boom, 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 all day long, right? And in between the meetings, I gotta run and make my kids lunch and come back down, make sure they got what they need, come back down, do another meeting, run back up. It's gonna be a very, very busy day and very, very, difficult. It's no question that it's difficult, But at the same time, I'm excited about it. I'm enthusiastic about it because I'm not looking at it with this gripping fear. I'm not saying to myself at 9 o'clock in the morning, how am I going to get through all this today? Right? All I do is I attend and take care of right now. And when I do that, it feels like it opens things up. It feels like I have more time. And I noticed this a long time ago is that, when I used to feel like, okay, well, if you have 15 minutes before you have to leave for somewhere, right? It's like you're leaving. Like there's no more time. 15 minutes is not anything, right? Like it's you get out the door. But I realized that 15 minutes is a very long time now, right? Like 15 minutes, there's a lot that you can get done in 15 minutes. And so so instead of like being anxious about, oh my gosh, I got to leave at 3 o'clock. It's 2:45. I'm panicked. Right? Well, no, you don't have to leave until 3 o'clock. So you have time to, record a video or make a phone call, send an email, have a conversation with your children. There's lots of time. And that's the thing that comes through in this practice is that time sort of opens up for us. It becomes more available to us. And that's mostly because we're stopping this, right? Or we're letting go of this, right? And on the podcast, I'm doing the wheels turning on the sides of my head because what I mean is that, when we're wrapped up in that, like, oh my gosh, all this stuff I got to do next week and next month and all that I have, all this, pressure, when we're focused on that stuff and we're thinking about that stuff, not only does it take a lot of energy to think about that stuff, but it also takes a lot of time. And when it, and that's why at the end of the day, we feel like for me, when I was living in the stress time, and as I just said, like 15 minutes before I had to leave somewhere, I was like, I better be at the door, or else I'm late. That's how I felt, which is not true, right? But one of the most prevalent feelings that I had throughout my whole life in that time when I was dealing with chronic stress was that I felt like I never had enough time for anything. Like I felt like I was always in a rush. Now, I mean, I've made some adjustments, but I still have just as busy a schedule. And now I have even more responsibilities because now I have 2 young children who are relying on me. I have a marriage, I have a house, I have a car, I have all this stuff, Like I still have all those pressures, but yet I don't feel like I have any hurry at all now. In fact, that's why my son bought me this mug for my birthday this year, which says "Don't hurry, be happy," and it comes with a little sloth, which is a tea steeping ball. So you put your tea leaves in the sloth. Sloth hangs on the side of the cup. But anyway, it's like, I didn't change, it's not like I moved to another country. It's not like I became some ascetic or I renounced all of my worldly, belongings or obligations or anything. In fact, I went the other way. I mean, I took on more now, right? Because it used to be that I worked for someone else. So, you got paid, even if you didn't perform one day or another. But, I don't have the choice now to just sit in bed all day because I have obligations to lots of different people out there who count on me and who rely on me. So if anything, my pressure has gotten more, but yet I feel like I have a lot more time now. And that's one of the most amazing things that happen during this practice. And so what comes from that, right? What's born out of that space, and this is really the exciting part, and this is what I wanted to really get into, right? It's not just that I feel less pressure. It's not just that I feel less of the damaging stress. Remember, that's why I started doing this, because there was something wrong with that. It was unhealthy. It was damaging me, right? But what's the beauty that comes from this? The beauty, the little flowers and plants that arise from this beautiful cultivated, soil of mindfulness, is these wonderful hobbies that I've picked up. And it's so gratifying. having a hobby in your life, having something that is just, something that you take care of on a regular basis, right? Which has nothing to do with anybody else except you and the thing that you're doing, right? It doesn't require anybody's, inputs. It might require some monetary things, but of course you're, going to do a hobby that you can afford and all that, right? But having something in your life that you can attend to, regularly, that is just for you, just for the sheer pleasure of doing it, and just for the sheer interest of doing it. Well, number one, that's a very healthy thing for you to do. It's very healthy psychologically to do that. I mean, any psychologist, I have a couple of psychologists on my list here who are watching today or listening today, and I'm sure you would confirm that it's a healthy thing to have a hobby, right? Because it gives you something to love. It gives you something to nurture. And that's a very positive thing, right? It's a creative thing. It's working out the parts of your brain that are really, that yearn for that sort of thing and that are very important to develop, right? But it's also very satisfying just to look at what you've done. That is just a real satisfaction to that. And so the hobbies that I've picked up are really kind of amazing. I really love them. About a year ago, year and a half, and it was about 6 to 9 months before the pandemic started. Okay, now before I left New York, I bought 2 houseplants, and I managed to keep them alive for like 6 months or something like that. Those are the only 2 plants in my entire life that have survived my my horrible black thumbs. Like literally, I would kill houseplants like you would have no idea, right? But you see this guy back here, over here, it's so hard to do when it's reversed like this. There we go. That guy right there is, that's just one of, I think I counted like 40, 50 plants now that I have. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I sit with them every day. I check in on them every day, and I feel their soil, how moist or how dry they are. I get, they all have their own personalities. Like I know which ones, don't like to be moved. I know which ones are okay and like flexible. I have a communication, a relationship with these plants, and it is amazing. And they're thriving. I actually took one, somebody on a local. Another thing that's really amazing is the community that you get through plants. Like I think it exists in just about every city. On Facebook, you have these houseplant groups in whatever city. Denver has like 4 or 5 of them. And somebody, I actually connected with somebody on one of these houseplant groups. And I volunteered to rescue and rehab her little monstera. And monstera is a very beautiful plant. It's one of these plants that has these big leaves with holes in it, right? But they're notoriously a little difficult to handle. They're not the worst, but they're certainly not the easiest, right? Like this one here. This one here is like, when I went to the flowers, because I'm in the basement office, I have this little window, but don't really get much natural light in here. And so I went to the plant store, and I was like, I need something that can survive. And she was like, yeah, this is a pothos, right? So this will survive anything. Like anybody can keep this alive, right? But I have some like this monstera that is, much more finicky. And I took this on as a rehab. Like, who the heck am I? A year ago I couldn't even keep a plant alive, but yet here I am. And the thing is thriving. I took over this plant, and it was like all droopy, and one of the leaves was dead, and I put it in a new pot. I gave it some love. It's all perked up, and it has new growth coming out. It's so exciting. But it's not just that, right? It's also, the other hobby that I've taken up. A few weeks ago, my wife and I invested in a cast iron wok. And I've, and over the last year, I have done so much more cooking than I ever have before. And cooking was always something that was very hard for me too. Remember when I'm living with stress, feeling like I don't have time to cook? Like, what are you talking about? And most of the time I was so distracted that I was burning stuff anyway, and it didn't matter, right? So it was all a joke, right? Like, yeah, I could cook a a pot of pasta. I could grill up some burgers and dogs on the grill, that kind of stuff. I could do that kind of stuff. Drinking beer while I'm cooking. I mean, I don't do that anymore. It's a long time ago. I don't eat meat anymore either. But I've gotten into cooking. I make breakfast burritos for my kids. I make what are some of the other things I made until I got to the stir fry and the fried rice. There was a couple other things that, like, some crazy burritos I was making, and some salads. I've gotten so into making salads. I can make you such a killer salad right now, and it's delicious, and it's filling, and it's healthy, and it's beautiful. And all of this stuff was never even close to available to me before. And so what I'm trying to tell you here today, right? This is the bottom line, is that no, and I'm sorry I got into that tangent about the age and stuff. If anybody out there is approaching their 50s and 60s, please don't worry. I'm 52 years old. Right? And I don't feel 52. I don't look 52. Most people don't believe that I'm 52. So it's not hopeless. I promise you that. Right? I'm just talking about in the sense of an unexamined, career, how it can end in a way that is exhausting. That's all I was trying to say with that. But please don't be too discouraged. Okay? And just do the practices, just wake up in the morning and recognize that today is a day that is an opportunity to practice being 100% here now. And when you do, you find that you'll have time and energy to do things that might have seemed just completely out of reach to you before. And so if you'd like to talk more about this at any age that you happen to be, I would love to talk to you. Yes, yesterday I was on a call with somebody from the mailing list who's in her college years, and she's trying to figure out her path and everything, and it was just like she's coming out of a very toxic situation. So this is somebody in the blossoming part of her life, and it was so beautiful to get to talk to somebody like that. But I also talk to people who are in their 60s, and 50s. And it's like, it doesn't matter where you are, to start this practice. It's never too late, and there's never a better time than right now. In fact, there's a quote that I really love, and I believe this is a Zen quote, if I'm not mistaken, that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. All right, everybody. I wish you well. I'll be back in tomorrow. If you have any questions or you want to talk about this, I'll put the link in the comment to get in touch with me, and I hope to talk to you soon. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.